everybody. I am Trey. Nice to see you. I'm here with all sorts of people. We're going to have a non-stop Q&A session because usually we do these hangouts, we talk about this and that, then we open it up to Q&A, and people seem to enjoy that. So this time we're just going to do all Q&A. You can look in my thread and ask questions. You can look in any of the other guests' threads and ask them questions. You can ask questions in the chat, and we've got people here to help us out, and we'll kind of be all over the place. So let's say hi to a few people here. Who do we have? Let's first say hi to Gordon Laing from Camera Labs. Hey, Gordon.
Hi, Trey. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Good. Did you, so you're down in New Zealand in the land of pagans. Did you guys celebrate Halloween?
Oh, yes, but in our own special way, we have the whole Wicker Man thing and everything. You should watch out next time you come. You escaped before we could fully integrate you last time.
Did you have any good Halloween experiences?
Yes, but none that we can discuss publicly.
I see. We had a great time with our 3 kids. You know, it's great with kids, but we went to this one house. It was the lamest Halloween house ever. It's, you know, I think this kind of stuff only happens in Austin, San Francisco. So we go up to the house, and the kids are all excited, and the lights are all on, and there's a big note on the door. And the note says, children, please leave any candy you have here so that we can go take the candy and feed it to homeless people. Oh, God, what the lamest house ever. Our kids were so disappointed. It was a real letdown because it had like a long walkway you had to go up, and there's this big build-up to it, and then you have to actually leave. How lame.
Was there a big empty bowl at the end?
Yeah, no kids had left candy.
But if any did, the other ones took
it.
Exactly.
Right.
Anybody who couldn't read just took the candy and moved on.
Yeah. And I can't imagine what this family would do. They would just go take a bowl of Snickers to homeless people, and I think the homeless people would be confused by a big bowl of Snickers. Like, give me a burger or something. I don't want these little baby Snickers. Well, okay, who else? Sorry, I took you down. Okay, who's next here? Let's say hi to Scott Kublin. Hey, Scott.
Hey everybody. How you doing?
Good. You're not wearing that goofy hat from your avatar.
No, I should have. I should have. I noticed you've got a hat on tonight. Bad hair day?
Yeah, I got to get a haircut. It's getting a little out of control.
Yeah. Hey, your little story about Halloween reminded me of when I was a kid, and I think it was one of my aunts that, for a birthday present, got me a card. And in the card, it said that they had made a donation to a certain charity in my name as my present. So it was the same kind of letdown with that.
Well, yeah, that's not too great either.
Now
no kid wants that. Now it's okay. Now that you're a responsible citizen.
8 or 9 years old, I didn't want to hear that.
Yeah, you just want some Twix. All right, now let's say hi to Jacob. Hey, Jacob.
Hey, Trey. How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Sure. Tell us about you a little bit.
I live in Seattle right now. I'm a photographer here. I shoot landscapes and city architecture and the occasional rock show, which is fun. I come from Australia, where we didn't really have Halloween. My Halloweens were mostly watching The Simpsons Treehouse Horror Special at 7:30 p.m. on Channel 10. That was about the extent of it. No one really went trick or treating.
That's sad story. But Simpsons is great. Yeah. Everyone loves The Simpsons. Hey, Julie, tell us about Julie.
Hello. Thanks for having me, guys.
Sure.
I'm in British Columbia, Canada, and I do tech support by day and Wednesday evenings or Thursday evenings, depending on where you are in the earth. I do a 4-hour broadcast where I just stream some music on one of the online radio stations. And I do photography on the side. I've always been interested in it, and I've dabbled in some black and white. In the beginning, I started out with black and white, just doing my own processing, and I had my own pseudo darkroom set up in an really old apartment that we were in, and it wasn't vented properly, but I just love the process of going through that whole thing where you take the photograph and then you process it. And so I've always been interested in photography, so that's kind of why I'm hanging out here all the time, listening to all you guys, trying to get as much information as I can.
All right. Well, speaking of not vented properly, let's say hi to Dave Veffer. Hey, Dave. How are you?
Trey. I'm pretty good. I'm chilling out. Halloween here was pretty much ruined because of the freak snowstorm that we had before all the leaves were gone. So basically, most of the trees in the town came down and knocked out power lines, and basically there was like a curfew yesterday. It's like all miners had to be in by 6 p.m. So like kids were like trying to trick or treat before 6 p.m. and giving them a whole bunch of candy, but it was kind of not fun for the kids. It was too bad, but they'll live.
That's too bad. They'll get on.
Yeah, they'll make it.
Well, thanks for coming. You were the instigator of this Q&A thing. You said we should do this with Nicole Young, and and now she can't make it because she's going to Vietnam. And James Brandon from Digital Photography School, and he's having plane trouble. He can't make it. So anyway, we'll just do it anyway.
Yeah, he IM'd me this morning. It was his idea, or yesterday. It was his idea. And
yeah. Well, we pay homage to him in his absence.
Hopefully he'll pop in.
Maybe he'll appear and answer a question at the last minute, one that all of us stumble around on. Let's say hi to Keith. Hello, Keith, with your new VidCast network that's finally launched.
Yeah, you don't have to tease me anymore now.
Yeah.
Yeah, KeithBarrett.tv has become the VidCast network, and the old URL still points to the new location, and hopefully it'll become a lot better experience for everybody.
Yay!
So, yay!
Yes, good.
Still a lot of work to do, though.
It took longer to launch than Duke Nukem.
No, I know. That was my joke. But I had to do it all myself. I had to do all the coding and everything. So I'm just a party of one. So
yeah.
And we didn't do anything for Halloween. So that's what I did. Is I stayed home and tried to finish that off.
That's nice. All right. Well, let's move right into the Q&A type stuff. I get a lot of questions directed my way, but I'd also like Gordon and Jacob and everyone to answer questions as well. So it's kind of a little bit of a free-for-all, no real structure to this thing. We can also have multiple people answer questions. So, I'm sure, Gordon, that since you run cameralabs.com, you are getting tons of questions all the times on your forums. And I know they're usually kind of equipment-centric. But what's one of the most common questions that's popping up nowadays, and how do you address it?
I think it's probably to do with the you're going to all groan here because I keep going on about them, but the kind of newish breed of mirrorless interchangeable lens cameras, which is a bit of a mouthful for saying a camera which has a DSLR sensor but without the mirror. Here's an old one. This is an Olympus EP2. The idea with these is that you have removable lenses like a DSLR, but inside there is a DSLR size sensor, so you get the quality, but you get it in a relatively small package. But still, you've got the same limitations as you have with DSLR lenses. So people look at these and they go, oh, wow, does it have a 10 times, a 20 times, a 30 times zoom? And you have to kind of let them down and say, well, no, it's actually only maybe got a 3 times zoom on it. So the big question that keeps coming up again and again, in fact, I was just answering it for someone just before coming online now, was weighing up whether you should buy something like a super zoom camera, which has a tiny little sensor but a massive zoom range, or whether you should get one of these type of cameras, which has got a great big sensor but a very small zoom range. Because of course the size of the lens is proportional to the size of the sensor. If you've got a big sensor, you need a big lens in front of it. That's the way physics works. So that's the kind of big thing that people have to kind of balance up. You can't really have it all. If you want a smallish camera, you have to trade either the lens zoom range or against the sensor size. And if you shoot a lot in low light, or you like that kind of out of focus effect on backgrounds on portraits, then you need a big sensor. If image quality rules, then you need a big sensor. But then, I've just tested 3 super zooms at Camera Labs: the Canon SX40HS, the Panasonic FZ50, and the Sony HX100V. So if anyone's interested in those 3 cameras, check out the reviews now. I've just published them. And they're really compelling cameras. The quality is not going to be as good as one of these, but, the smallest zoom range is 24 times. The biggest one is 35 times. That's a 24 to 840 millimeter lens in a package that small in the DSLR. So, the quality might not be as good as DSLR, but the flexibility of a lens like that is unbelievable. I've not actually answered a question, have I? I've just rambled again.
No, that was sort of a napalm-like answer. That's all right.
It didn't help anyone.
Well, would you say that these mirrorless cameras are comparable to DSLRs like 3 years ago in terms of sensor
I'd say
size?
they're comparable to DSLRs, right? Oh, in size, or in quality.
Yeah, quality.
In quality, they're comparable to the latest DSLRs because they've got the same sensors. I mean, something like a Sony NEX has got an APS-C sensor. That's the same sensor that Nikon used in their DX format DSLRs, the same sensor that Sony uses in all of their DSLRs, apart from the couple of full-frame bodies they did. You know, I mean, the quality is as good as. The interesting thing, the Sony A77's got a 24-megapixel APS-C sensor, same sensor that's in the Sony NEX7, but the NEX7 could actually outperform it. It doesn't have a mirror in the way, absorbing all the light, because that's the Sony one with the fixed mirror that absorbs some of the light. So, you know, the quality is as good as. The only thing you're compromising on is not having an optical viewfinder and not getting that constant feedback when you're doing continuous shooting.
Right. Well, I have a question here that's related to mirrorless cameras in a way. This was on my...
Is it from Sergey Brin?
What? What'd you say?
He was asking in one of your threads the other day, wasn't he? About he was complaining about the size of the tiny sensors in them because he wanted.
Oh, from Sergey. No, this isn't Sergey's question.
Yeah.
I get the impression that Sergey doesn't have any questions; he just knows. But anyway, here's a question. This is from Georg Jung. Hope I said that right. It's a cool name. I hate to mispronounce it. He goes, here's my question for the Hangout concerning your Red Epic camera. I am very curious about your test results so far. Do you think that this camera will take you to the next level of HDR photography? Well, I have it right here. I can show it. If you've never seen a Red camera, this is what it looks like. It's kind of big. I might accidentally be making it look lighter than it is. It's quite complex too. There's quite a few different controls. It's got this sort of cool HD screen up here that flexes around, and it's a touch screen like an iPad and everything. And then there's all sorts of controls on this. This thing's also kind of cool because you can pop it off, and you can take it. Let me release it here. So this is a controller that you can have with you, and you can set this on a tripod or whatever. Right now, I happen to have just a sort of an R4 strap on it that I just sling over my shoulder, Chewbacca style. I have a special Nikon mount on here, so I can mount all my Nikon lenses on here. This one is a 24 prime. So in relation to his question. So you can use this for video and stills, for both. And you can actually take hundreds of frames per second and just and every one of those is a raw file that you can pluck out and process. You know, I haven't really released anything yet. I'm still playing with it. You know, I'm not a perfectionist, but I do want to play with it a lot more. Frankly, I'm still very uncomfortable with it. But I was also very uncomfortable with kind of the higher-end DSLR I got several years ago. Now I feel pretty conversant with that. So I like feeling uncomfortable with this thing. And I think the next step is going to be it's just a different way of thinking about photography in a way. And I don't know where the future of all this stuff is going. And I still shoot primarily with my DSLR for all my kind of epic type shots. I accidentally used a pun there in an unintentional way. But the way of the future, I think, is that the internet, right? If you give it some sort of volitional sentience, maybe it is a beast that just wants more and more content. So, you know, photographers are already pretty good at feeding the internet content because we make these nice little two-dimensional pretty things that people can consume on the internet. But the internet is sort of has this insatiable desire for content. So since it wants more content, I kind of feel like using devices that are able to deliver it, another order of magnitude of content is sort of the next step. Because, I, as, one person with one brain can only do so much. And so maybe if I start using tools that can increase the amount of stuff I can deliver to the internet, maybe there's something there. I feel like that's the shape of a certain truth I can't quite totally understand. But this camera is very fun. It's a little uncomfortable, but I don't know what's going to happen next, and I don't know when I'll release something. But when I do, I hope it's acceptable to everybody.
So Trey,
I'm sure it will be.
now your pocket camera?
What do you ask, Gordon?
Is the D3X now your pocket camera?
Yeah, that's my little thing I just throw in the glove box. No, it's the D3X is still my main body. It is tough to carry both of these things around, though. It is you feel it at the end of the day, for sure. Hey, Jacob, have you found any questions you might want to answer?
I actually have been thinking about chiming in on this thread, but I was waiting for Scott to jump in. I wanted to talk about this. This is the small pocket-sized camera that I picked up. It's a Fuji X100. The reason I got this was because I found myself walking around with my D700, and it was always very cumbersome, and I always try and pull it out, and I'd be lost in trying to figure out the right settings to try and get the shot, and by the time I was ready to shoot the picture, the moment had gone that I saw or what have you, or it wasn't quite the same. So this pocket camera, or this much smaller form factor size, similar to what Gordon was showing earlier, I find is actually really, really good for just like carrying around and street shooting. The sensor inside it is as good as some of the APS-C sensors that are in modern day SLRs. So I've been really happy with the results I've gotten from it. It's definitely good, and I think it's almost funny to hear people talk about needing only one camera, or wanting to shoot with just one camera. I like the different form factors to be able to shoot. In a way, I always feel freer shooting with this than I do with my SLR because it's much more convenient to carry around and shoot with.
Jacob, is that the one with the hybrid viewfinder?
It is. There's a little toggle.
It's really nice, isn't it?
I don't often. I find myself more using the optical. The electronic version than the optical one, just so I can. It's got a better definition of the edge of the frame, and that's just what's been more useful for me. Either that or live view if I'm holding it like down on the ground or something like that, or up above me where I'm not head height with the camera. But yeah, it's got it's a different viewfinder. A curtain sort of pops up in front where you can see an electronic heads-up display. It's kind of fun. But I see RC chiming in. I should stop talking about the X100.
There's a question in the chat room here from Brian29. It's kind of on the lines of lenses here. He's saying if you could only shoot with one lens for the rest of your life, what lens would you shoot with and why? Who wants to answer that one?
That's a really good question.
Sorry, I was muted. My son is playing piano in the background.
It's fine.
So why don't you take that one first, Gordon?
I'm a wide-angle fanatic, so I would have to go for something very wide. If I could have two lenses, it would have been like a 17, but since I'm only allowed one, it will be a 24. That is my favorite focal length. It's not so wide that you can't use it for some things. By the way, that's 24mm equivalent. So if that were on an APS-C body, that would actually be a 16mm lens. But it's wide enough to get a really nice field of view without being too extreme if you need to use it for other things. So a 24 equivalent would be my choice.
Cool. How about you, Scott? If you can only have one lens, what would it be?
If I could only have one, I guess with my style of photography right now, I'd probably go with, I've got the 10 to 22mm on my Canon, which, Gordon, what's the equivalent of that, 16 to something?
Yeah, he times it by 1.6, so it'll be 16 to 1.6.
Yeah. I guess the wide angle. I'd say the wide angle. And I'm going to take a stab at what yours is, Trey. I'm going to say your favorite would be the 14 to 24.
Yeah, this whole this panel's a little bit front loaded with landscape photographers, so of course we like wide angle stuff. But ask a different panel, they might choose the 50 millimeter or
that's what I would
85
choose.
prime or something like that.
I would love to just rock an 85 1.4. That would suit my city shooting, and if I needed to shoot a concert, that's a great focal length to be shooting out of a pit from, and it's wide enough to get lots of light in there. Nice portrait shots.
Well, how about getting a wide angle and then getting a whole bunch of 2x extenders? Is that cheating?
Yes.
I have a question that just appeared here in my stream when I posted this hangout from Chris Lehman. He says, when framing a shot, how many shots of that frame do you take? Do you always get the shot you are after in the first setup, or you take multiple shots from various angles and choose the most interesting one? Okay. Well, whenever I actually set up and take, I set up my tripod and I aim my camera and all that, I take a lot of care in doing that. And there's something about setting up with the tripod that I really like. There's a lot of, it's almost like you put more thought into it in a way. It's like, because, you're like Renoir setting up in a field. You're going to spend all afternoon there. You want to put your easel in the right spot. So when I do set up to take that shot, I just take pretty much 5 exposures from -2 to +2 most of the time. And then as to the second part of the question, yes, I will move around and get multiple compositions in that area. Because to me, it's just it's a game. And if you are someplace interesting with cool mountains or trees or architecture, it's a great game to see how many beautiful compositions you can make. It's fun for me. And then, I get back and I've got maybe 20 or 30 shots from around an area that I pluck out 1 or 2 to work on. And then a few months later, I might go pluck out another 1 or 2 to work on. Like just today, for example, I was looking at some of my old shots from New York in 2009 that I've never processed. And I plucked a few more out and I processed them. I'm very, very happy with them. And I'll probably, release those in the next week or so. So anyway, that's my answer there.
When I was first learning photography, that was actually one of the things that I would do when I would go somewhere, would be to see how many different pictures I could get of the exact same thing. Wouldn't even have to be, the most interesting subject in the world, but it would be a good way to produce different pictures of the same scene to sort of get a feel for what makes an interesting picture.
Yeah.
Trey, something I'd like to
go ahead, Gordon.
add to that, if I can.
Yes.
I have a really bad technique, a really bad habit, which is to try and go too tight in on the subject. I think it's an obsession with megapixels and resolution, where I want to concentrate every last bit of resolution of my camera on my subject. So I'll go really in tight, and then I'll get home and I'll have a look at it and I'll think, you know what? See that little thing at the edge that's cropped off? Wouldn't it be better if I just had a bit more space? And of course, you can never crop out. You can always crop in. So my advice in terms of composition would be not only take lots of pictures, at different focal lengths and angles of the same subject, because you may end up preferring one or another, but don't go in as tight, especially with people, as you may be originally tempted to do, because it gives you no margin for error. Whereas, somebody could just suddenly do a really fantastic pose and their hand will be maybe off the frame a little bit. And you'll think, oh, if only I was zoomed out a little bit more, a little bit further away, I could have got them all in. And most cameras these days have got so much resolution to spare that it's perfectly fine to do a little bit of cropping. So I would say go a little bit wider than you think, just for protection.
Excellent. Julie, what else do we have percolating out there?
Yeah, there's one question here regarding HDR and raw pictures. It's from, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing the name right, it's Theory from France. She's saying now that she's in Woodinville next to Seattle, Washington. Rendering in Photomatix Pro, there are 3 raw pics rendering in Photomatix Pro. Do you adjust the raw pre-Photomatix? And if you do, don't you risk to lose some of the detail? Or do you just keep the raw first and edit after?
Well, I will answer the essence of that question. I think I know what she's getting at. So what you should do is always shoot in RAW, okay? So let's say you have 3 raw photos at -2, 0, and +2. What you should do is convert those to JPEGs, okay, using Aperture or Lightroom. And then take those JPEGs into Photomatix. So people say, well, why wouldn't you just take the raw into Photomatix? Doesn't Photomatix want as much data as possible? Won't you get a better result? No, not necessarily, because what happens is the very first thing that Photomatix does is it takes your raw and converts it to JPEG for you. So you're better off doing that. It makes your workflow faster, and it's possible / probable that Lightroom or JPEG or Aperture may do a better job in that conversion. And then, so the second part of the question is, well, then why even shoot in RAW if you're going to convert to JPEG? Well, Photomatix and pretty much any tool, they will do something interesting to your photo, okay? But you really don't want to take what comes out of Photomatix as the gospel, as what your final result, because my goal with these tools is to get about 70% of the photo looking good, okay? Having the texture, having the light, having whatever I felt at the scene there. And 70% is always different. And Photomatix and these tools typically really mess up 30% of the photo. So you need to go clean that up in Photoshop afterwards. That's sort of the master's touch or whatever. And then the cleanup process, if you still have those 3 RAWs left over, then you've got a lot of leeway in all those component photos that you can pull in to correct the damaged area.
Can I just chime in there with something too?
You may.
One of the things that I do before bringing stuff into Photomatix or before even post-processing it inside of Photoshop is inside of Lightroom, I'll apply the lens profile corrections to each of my RAWs. And if you're not familiar with what that means, it's, for example, when you're shooting with a wide angle, you'll have a lot of vignetting on the side. And there's also oftentimes a lot of chromatic aberration. And the lens profile corrections inside of Lightroom will help get rid of a lot of that. And then I'll take that and then I'll bring that into Photomatix. And like you do, Trey, I also will then take the raw into Photoshop, and it just gives you a head start. It's a lot less work that you have to do inside of those programs. You know, it helps with the vignette, the chromatic aberrations that I've noticed recently. Saves me a tremendous amount of time. There's hardly any chromatic aberration when I apply those lens profiles.
Excellent. What's next, Julie?
I have another kind of related one. This is from Sometimes Magic Works. Specifically, hello to everybody, specifically for Trey. How's your work in your stream changed with the new version of Lightroom? I'm using the export button to move files directly to Photomatix and then saving an import button back to Lightroom.
Well, I have a weird workflow. I won't really go through it all right now because it's too labyrinthal, and you can only talk about workflow so much before even very visual people can keep track of windows and directories and stuff in their head, but they lose track if I go, you know, too many pushes and not enough pops off the stack. So as far as Lightroom, the new version of Lightroom, how has it changed my workflow? It's hard for me to say because my workflow does change every 3 months or so. And frankly, I can't even remember the old Lightroom. I don't remember what is new and what's not new. But my answer has neither been satisfactory nor informative to anybody I know. So let me try to put something interesting around it so people can hang their hat on something. As far as workflow goes, you should think of your workflow as a living book, you know, an ever-flowing river, something that is always changing. You'll never have the perfect system because new tools, new hardware, new software, your life changes. And as your life changes, your workflow needs to change with it. So, you know, I know people are always fascinated with other people's workflows. I guess that's okay as a starting point. But really, you need to find your own. And as you go through your own workflow, you're going to feel extremely uncomfortable, right? You're going to feel like, oh, I bet there's a better way to do this. But the point is that everybody is thinking that, right? Even pros. Even as I go through my Sisyphusian steps of moving this digital paraphernalia around my computers, I'm thinking there must be an easier way to do this. And I'm always trying to refine and become more efficient and this sort of thing. But anyway, just be comfortable in your discomfort, because that's where everybody's at. And just try to become more efficient and iterate and improve on your process over time.
Okay. I'm just trying. The questions are kind of bouncing around here, but I've got another one here. Sorry, it's just directly for you, Trey, as well. Notice that you carry a 14 by 24 and a 24 prime. Why both lenses, and do you really need the extra speed of the prime?
Well, I carry a second body to get people shots and shots of found objects or found art or you know, little interesting things here or there. And I'm very lazy in a way that I hate to change lenses on my camera. And I feel so lame, you know, when I see something go by and it was really cool. I think, oh, you know, I should really change lenses, but I really don't feel like taking my bag off and changing my lens. And then that moment passes and I think, oh, I really should have done it. I'm so lazy. What's wrong with me? So now, anyway, to get around this somewhat temporary self-loathing, I take a second camera, and on the second camera, I have my prime lens, and I use that prime lens to capture these people shots and whatnot, so that I can be fast and artsy and get good bokeh and all this sort of stuff. And then I keep my main camera for landscapes and whatnot.
I think you confuse people because you showed a 24 prime on the Epic, and they thought you were using that one on your second body. You don't usually use that on your second body. You just have that for the Epic, right? Yeah,
the Epic is an asterisk in my photographic life, so just don't pay attention to that. Hey, I have a question here for Gordon that was in my stream that I don't really know the answer to. It was from Wes Lum. He says, what do you think about the rumored specs for the D800?
Right. Rumors are always really tricky things to talk about because it's just speculation. As a journalist, sometimes you're privy to advanced information, but you signed an NDA which prevents you from talking about it. Sometimes you're not privy to it, in which case you are just speculating or bluffing. So either way, it's not good because you can't say anything. So I know nothing genuinely about this future product other than what people are chatting about. And sites like Nikon Rumors and Canon Rumors do an amazing job at getting out some pretty accurate information. A lot of the time what they publish does come to fruition. So I look at the same rumors as you guys do and see what they're talking about. I would say one thing, though, is that the flooding in Thailand has really put Nikon and Sony and all the hard disk manufacturers and so many people. I mean, obviously, there's a huge human element to it as well, but in terms of just technology, it's put a lot of technology companies back. So anything that was supposed to be coming out soon will almost certainly be delayed, especially from Nikon and Sony. So I think maybe, well, I don't really want to discuss, talk and speculate about what Nikon might be doing because I think they're struggling to actually, get product out. I mean, luckily they've also got factories in Japan, and the Nikon One system is made in China. So the ones that are really affected are the DX format cameras, the APS-C stuff. But that's a huge part of their market. The hard disk situation is interesting to see what happens with that over the next few months as well, because we're in really short supply. So no, sorry, Wes, I can't really speculate beyond what the rumors have said. I think you were talking about price points. I think they would still have a gap below the professional line, like the D3X line. So I would expect it to be pitched I would pitch it at around the same point as a D700 and a Canon 5D Mark II or III. That's where that market would be, I would say. But again, just pure speculation.
Hey, Gordon, what is it like nowadays? Because I know you're both an old school journalist when you were back in the UK, and the way they treated the press was so differently back then. You actually ran Computer Shopper magazine, right?
Personal Computer World. Shopper was one of our
that's your competitor.
One of those real kind of wedge type magazines that you can weigh down the shelves in the newsletter.
Oh yeah, I used to get those all the time. I built my own PCs. I had to max out my Quake FPS, and yeah, I know.
I remember that.
You know, Trey, the funny thing is people would always complain about the advertising. In the peak of this, in the mid-90s, they would say, we would bring out magazines that had almost 1,000 pages a month. And they'd say, yeah, but 750 of those pages are adverts. And you'd say, yeah, but 250 of those pages are editorial. And you compare that to a modern magazine, you know, how many editorial pages do you get in a modern magazine? I mean, it's changed so much.
Yeah, so back then they treated you like a real press human being, right? But now, here you are with one of the best camera sites with the most traffic, cameralabs.com. I mean, you do really, really good analysis of all these cameras, and you know, you drive sales off your site. People go read your reviews and they go, I want this camera. And these are all very internet-y type people. They jump on Amazon or B&H and buy immediately. But I get the feeling that all these big camera manufacturers, it's just like pulling teeth to get them to send you samples and to get them to respect your authority.
I know, and you do sound like Carmen when you have to say it. You know, it's the problem is I made life really difficult for myself by moving from London to a rural part of New Zealand, which is fantastically beautiful and a great lifestyle move. But professionally speaking, no one quite knows how to treat me journalistically or with supply. The trouble is most manufacturers take a very local stance. So I have to be generally served by the New Zealand distributors or subsidiaries. And they do a great job given the resources that they have, but a lot of the time they either don't get the product or they get it late or they don't have the same kind of sense of urgency that a lot of the agencies, say in the Northern Hemisphere, have. You know, like Europe and North America, everyone's so frantically after the latest information that a lot of the companies are geared up to dealing with that passion. Whereas down here, you know, a lot of people are kind of more interested in going out and, you know, and enjoying the outdoors and, you know, having the great lifestyle. So there's kind of pros and cons to living here. But that's my problem. It's of no interest to anyone else, except that I will occasionally whinge given the chance that I don't get invited to as many parties as I used to.
But, you know, in a meta way, I think it's telling that all these huge camera companies are still oriented geographically, where it doesn't really matter that you're in New Zealand. It matters that you have like one of the top sites for camera reviews on the internet. And, you know, you should be getting everything way ahead of all these camera magazines, which are you know, losing readership every month.
Well, you know, you're preaching to the choir. I mean, I completely agree with you, Trey. I think these days, everyone finds the information wherever they can. They find the information, and that generally means they find it online. It doesn't matter where that information originated. It doesn't matter who got that information to them. They just want to get it. I want to know the price or the specification of this new camera. I don't care whether I get it from an American, an Australian, a British, a New Zealand. I don't care where it comes from as long as I get that information. That's what a typical consumer's like these days. Same when it comes to buying it. They just want to buy it at the cheapest price from the person who can get it to them the fastest with the best support. Is that asking too much? So I think companies should take a more global perspective, but very, very few of them do. There should be global PR agencies that are set up to deal with websites that have global audiences, rather than just taking a very local stance. But so far, no one's taking the lead on that. So if any camera companies or indeed any companies are listening, you know, look out there on the internet. There's people publishing for a global audience. So, you know, come up with a department that can deal with requests from those publications. It would certainly make our life so much easier.
Well, I agree. I'm about to do I've been getting really into this because I'm about to do a big expose on traditional photography magazines. We did an experiment this summer where we advertised. We did full-page ads in the first third of 3 of the biggest magazines out there, and we tracked the results because I'm very into heuristics and metrics and this sort of stuff. And so we have exact results what each of the magazines did for us or didn't do for us. I know exactly how much money we spent. I know how much revenue it generated. And so I'm putting together a very scientific analysis of this. And of course, I can do this because I'm completely independent. I have no axe to grind, really, other than just to, it's just really good proof that how these paper magazines are just, I don't know who reads these things anymore. They claim these huge readerships, but I think they just show up on people's doorsteps, and maybe a tenth of them get read, and maybe, another tenth of them might get flipped through. So we'll see. Anyway, I'll release that bomb at some point in the next few months. I don't care. Who cares about that? I don't care. I'm totally independent, so I can do these things. Okay. Oh, look who came in. RC Concepcion. Hello, RC.
Hey, what's going on, man? How are you?
Welcome.
Good. What have you been up to?
Oh, nothing. I was just putting my daughter to bed. So I saw the hangout late. I'm kind of like juggling. I'm sitting there and I'm like, all right, type, watch, go check, type, watch. So,
well, we've got some hardcore Q&A going on here. I took us on a little aside there with Gordon. I apologize. Hey, what's our next question? Julie, what are we looking at?
I've got one from Jeff Jarrett's. I'm getting chromatic aberration on my kit 18 to 135 with my 60D, especially on wide-angle HDRs. Why do they show up more on an HDR, and is chromatic aberration present on the L series, on the L lens series?
RC, you can take that one. I see chromatic aberration questions.
It's hard to say. Unfortunately, if you're talking L series, and chances are you're probably talking Canon, so it's probably one of the reasons why you're having that problem. No, you knew that was going to happen. I did. No, it's one of those things where it's like I don't know enough about the lens to be able to know whether or not it suffers from chromatic aberration or not, or whether or not your L glass is going to be able to do that. I've shot with some L glass before. And I haven't really noticed it enough to be able to say one way or another. The only thing that I can say about when you're working with HDR is that a lot of the times, if you have any problem with something, that problem is automatically going to get compounded, I find, when you're working with an HDR image. So if you have a color shift and you do an HDR, that color shift is going to be magnified. If you have a cast, you'll see that cast becomes magnified. If you have noise, that noise is going to become magnified. So it would stand to reason that if you have any kind of chromatic aberration, that could be something that would be magnified in something like that. As to whether or not one piece of glass is going to be able to do better than another, that's going to be hard to say, to be honest.
And RC, I think you weren't in the Hangout before when I said this, but one of the things that I do is I apply the lens profile corrections inside of Lightroom, and that does a really good job with that.
Mm-hmm. And that'd be a great way. More often than not, whenever I take something inside of Lightroom, by and large, what I usually do is I usually sync my white balance and I sync lens correction to try to be able to mitigate some of that stuff. So what we could do is just kind of take that down, and maybe that's a cool, rather than just kind of go, don't know, sorry, dude. We can take that down and we can actually track it. I can do some shots with whatever lens you need and see how it fares compared to an L series. I'd be game for that.
I think it's worth mentioning as well, because I test a lot of lenses, and it's becoming harder and harder because manufacturers are doing more and more correction inside the cameras. And it's not like in the old days where it just happened to JPEGs and you could suddenly see the raw horror literally on the raw file, because some of them are actually performing corrections at the raw level prior to actually recording that data as a raw file. So it's hard to evaluate lenses completely in that respect, because you might say, hey, this lens is bereft of any optical aberrations, and then you think, well, hang on, how is that even possible? And it's because they're doing a lot of correction before you even get your hands onto the file.
Some of the HDR software as well will also help you reduce or mitigate the chromatic aberration present in the tone mapping process. I know Photomatix does it. I think Nik's software for HDR does it as well. So look for that option there too if you're seeing that. But
hey Jacob, there's another question here that I'd like you to answer.
All right.
It's directed at me, but I'm going to delegate to you because I think you might have a better answer than me. It's from Robert Walters, asked this in my stream. He said, have you ever exhibited your work in a gallery setting or had any desire to do so? If you printed your work, what mediums do you find express your work the best? Matte papers, metallic papers, canvas?
That's a good question, and I've printed some of my stuff and had it hung in a couple of places around Seattle. Nothing like gallery-like or anything like that. Just a couple of local coffee houses and things like that, where it's a bit more intimate. But my best answer in that is it depends on the picture that you're shooting or that you want to have printed. If there are a lot of vibrant colors, there are actually some really interesting solutions, like the metallic option. I've had a picture of the Space Needle printed on a metallic surface, and it has very much of almost like a vinyl like sheen to it. All the colors that are really vibrant in the image or are in the sky behind the image seem to pop a lot more. And with canvas as well, that can have the same effect, but the canvas has a unique texture to the image as well. So if your picture is like of this dingy cave or a nice like urbex picture or something like that, canvas might be a better option there. My friend and her trained Nicole Young, she turned me on to this place or this company called Backlit Box, which is really, really interesting. And it's like a LED lighting, or much of it's LED or just lighting from behind the picture. It's like a canvas where it sits off the wall, but there's lighting coming out from behind the image, and it makes all the colors and everything seem to glow really nicely. I haven't had a lot. Sorry, go ahead.
That's the backlit box. Yeah, it is LED.
Yeah. I haven't had a lot of experience with paper printing because I haven't had a lot. Most of the stuff I've had printed, admittedly, is canvas. I wonder if anyone else can speak to the paper printing if they've had more stuff printed. Maybe you, Trey, I'll turn that back on you if you've had anything like that.
I do a lot of printing. I do a lot of paper printing here at work, and I find that I personally like the look and the feel and the texture of very, very soft cotton-based papers. So if you take a look at things like Hahnemühle has like a Photorack Satin 310 GSM that's really, really nice. Epson has, I want to say, a cold press bright that I think that's really, really nice. It's a bright textured paper. I find, for me, my HDRs tend to pop really, really nicely on bright papers. So cold press bright, hot press bright, it's a very, very smooth Epson paper that's on there. I tend to like that soft cottony feel. I used to be a big exhibition fiber kind of guy, but I thought that it looked a little bit too fake when you did that. So I tend to go in extremes when I work with that. I'll either do a very, very texture-based paper, like like the Hahnemühle or like the exhibition, like the press papers, and then on the opposite extreme, I'll go into metals, and I like printing on the metal side of things. So if you look at companies like Image Wizards has a really, really nice metal that they usually use to be able to print, and I dare say it almost looks backlit, which makes it look really, really nice. It makes the colors and the detail pop really, really nicely. But with the psychology of most of that stuff, and I sell a bit of prints, like off of Flickr and off my site and off of things that people ask. A lot of the times, I tend to want to print on the cotton-based papers because there's that kind of, if you're going to charge X amount of money to be able to do it, you want it to have that specific feel. You want it to have that very, very fine art presentation to it. So to that, whenever I make the print, the packaging, and the weight of the paper and all that kind of stuff, you take that into account when you're delivering it that way. So for what it's worth, that's what we tend to use. I print on Epson 7900 and a 4900. They look pretty good.
Mm-hmm. You guys, you want to see an example of something from Image Wizards? This is actually one of Trey's prints that my wife got me this past Christmas. I know it's hard to see here with this webcam, but this is on the a piece of aluminum, I think it is, and it's a really, not really thick, but I've had some other ones printed from some other companies on aluminum. And some of the other companies, the aluminum is real flimsy. Like if you shake it, you can hear that little wobble sound from it. But this one was nice and thick. And this one has, I guess it's called a floating mount on it.
Yeah, that's a nice mount.
Yeah, it just makes it look like it's floating off the wall. And this just feels like a real high quality product from Image Wizards. And some of the other ones that I've kind of been ordering from as I test these different places to order them from, some of them you can just tell are really, really, let's just say, expensive. And there's a reason.
The other thing I want to mention real fast is the location, the physical place where you're going to put the image. If it's going to be in like a really, really brightly lit area, putting it on paper behind glass may not be a great idea unless you have a really, really good non-reflective glass. Looking at it from different angles, you might just see a reflection of what's outside or something like that. Whereas if it's canvas or something more matted and non-reflective, it won't. You'll still see the picture that you printed rather than whatever else is going on in the room around you. I hope that
Okay, let's stop talking about printing. I can only take so much printing talk. I mean, it's always the same thing. Okay. Let me see. What's the next question? Okay,
Trey,
here.
I've got a question come on my stream if you want.
Please, go ahead, Gordon.
Okay, this is a question I'd like to know the answer to, actually, because I'm sure there's a better way of doing it. I'm sure we all wonder if there's a better way of doing it. It comes from Grover Webb. He says he's after some thoughts on search engine optimization, not so much for websites or pages, but for actual photographic images. He's talking about tagging photos. Can anybody recommend some good ways to tag photos so that when people search for them, their pictures come up first?
I guess that's directed towards me, maybe?
Yes, Scott
You're
Kublin.
pretty qualified for this, Scott.
What I can tell you based on what I've found is the alternate text that you're using on images. A lot of people say that that doesn't really matter anymore, but if you look at my site or Trey's site, I believe as well, we're all putting the alternate text in there. And Google is actually reading that. And that's one of the things, one of many things that it's looking at to determine, not just how well your web page ranks, but the particular image itself. And then also there's the title tag of the image itself that you can tag appropriately. But for my alternate text, though, it doesn't look real spammy. My alternate text will say, picture of bridge showing the sunset behind it. Or if it's a famous bridge, I'll use the name of the bridge in it just to increase the likelihood that if someone's searching for that phrase. So alternate text, the text that's surrounding the image on the page, the overall theme of the page that the image is on, those are all factors that go into there. Now, I don't know if the question was, is there a way to kind of automate some of that? And usually you can automate.
No, I don't know about automation. I think it's more about optimization and not just that, but also on images that you might upload to photo sharing sites like, say, Flickr.
Well, you can actually, I believe, have your Flickr pages ranking as well if you're tagging those appropriately. I haven't even tested the Flickr stuff to see if I could get one of my pages on Flickr to rank. But I tag everything, though, and it's not just for the search engines. It's, like on Flickr, I might tag my images, but that's so if somebody's on Flickr using Flickr's search that I'll show up. It just makes sense to tag them. It's just, I don't know, it's just general housekeeping is kind of the way I look at it.
So what about the keywords and the actual IPTC tags embedded into the metadata of the image? So I would imagine that affects some search engine optimization, right?
If they're able to see that, is that stuff actually showing on the page?
Not necessarily, but
it's embedded inside the image.
Yeah, I would think Google, when they're scanning the images, I would think that they're taking that into account. Probably.
I don't think Google
sure.
does a lot of that. I have found that the alt text actually has more SEO rating than the tags from the search engine perspective, and the tags work better from things like Flickr.
Well, we know that the tags are working because there's so many sites that you can just search a certain tag and eventually you'll see your stuff showing up in there. But
Scott,
using those tags to increase your ranking in Google, I don't know. I'm sorry, Gordon, what?
You mentioned when you were alt tagging a photo on a web page, you would say have photo of Big Ben or something like that. Would you actually put in the words photo of? Would that be actually working against you to put that in? Would you not just say just Big Ben, London, or something like that?
You're talking about for the alt text?
Yes.
Yeah, I actually put photo of, even though obviously it's a photo because that's what the alt text is for. Well, actually, no, because it could be an icon or something that you use in the alt text. So yeah, I will put photo of, but I'm not putting photo of because I'm thinking that's going to increase my rankings. I'm putting that in there because that's what alt text is for, to kind of speak to someone who...
Yeah, it's accessibility, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And it just so happens that if you do things the right way, Google tends to reward you for that.
It's also what handicapped people see too. It turns into audio, and that's what they hear.
Yeah, visually impaired. Yeah, that's big for them. The alt text.
One of the things that I usually that I started telling people from an SEO and from an optimization and ranking and things like that is I tend to tell people to almost adopt more of a WordPress type platform for displaying their images and serialization of their images. And a lot of the times I think that it's more powerful for you to be able to have serialized content on a website. It's more powerful for you to, I mean, obviously you're going to be able to post an image of a sunset in Cancun, and you're going to alt tag it for, W3C compatibility and things like that. And you'll say sunset in Cancun. But if you also turn around and you write an entry under that says, this is a sunset that I was at in Cancun. I took this with this kind of camera and all that kind of stuff. You're going to index a little bit better. Your content's going to be a little bit more relevant. At the end of the day, a lot of the times people forget that search engines are looking for content, and the more valid the content is, the better it is. So if you just put up a website that has a whole bunch of alt tags and you've got spiders running, just going alt tag, alt tag, alt tag, alt tag, and they're trying to come up with some sort of algorithm against that. And a search engine is just trying to be able to look at site A and site B and say, of these two sites, which one of these looks like it's actually producing more content? If site A looks like it's producing more content, then that one's more important than site B. So if you're not producing the content, you're going to get ranked a little bit lower. And that's where I've become a really, really big fan of getting people on, like a blog-ish type website, not because I want them to create this huge, this is where I was, this is what I felt, this is what I'm looking at kind of diary, but by serializing your content and just adding, this is what I did, this, just a quick description about most of that stuff, you're generating content on your own site. And by generating that content, you it does a lot of things, but one of the things that it does most is help you become a little bit more relevant in terms of search engines.
The other thing it does is PageRank is created by pages that are indexed inside of Google. So every new page that you create, assuming it gets indexed in Google, has generated PageRank, usually between 0 and 1 when it's first born. And these pages that you keep publishing all have links that are pointing back to not just your homepage, but other links throughout your site. So with each new page that has a little bit of PageRank, you're increasing the probability of some of your stuff ranking higher just through your own internal linking structure.
And I mean, and now like take it off of SEO, right? A lot of the times it's like people go, I'm sorry, but I get really I get really passionate about this kind of stuff, because what happens is, as photographers, we just want to be able to post our images, we put our images online, and then we want to be able to kind of rank higher or lower in this game. But a lot of the times, consumers have gotten really, really used to looking at a portfolio of images and kind of going, all right, this is the best 30 that they've shot out of how many? 20, 30, 40, 100, 200. There's no qualification of that. So not only do you, if you take a website and you make it journal-based, blog-based, and you serialize your content like that, not only do you help on the SEO site, not only do you help on the page ranking site, but you're also, by generating content on a repeated basis, you're generating experience. You're generating clout, dare I say. where if a person's going to turn around and look at, let's say all of a sudden I'm XYZ buyer and I want to be able to hire you for a job. Obviously, I can look at your portfolio and go, well, maybe I might hire this person. Whereas if they look at what you're putting on your blog, they can turn around and go, oh, look, last week he shot this, the week before he shot this, the week before he shot this. Now, all of a sudden, this person knows this guy that I'm thinking about looking at can produce on a constant basis. You know, you've generated trust. And a lot of the times when people call me for something, I mean, people don't call me much anymore because obviously I'm based on doing a lot of the teaching thing. But I still get offers every now and again. And I'm like, hey, listen, can I send you a port? I have a book. I can send you the book. They're like, no, don't worry about it. We've already seen the website. So by that time, you don't have to do any selling. The selling's already been done. And it's something that you sell it on the blog. It helps your page rank. It helps your clout, if you will. And it makes you an expert in the field. How could you not, win on something like that?
Okay, what's next for us, Miss Julie?
I've actually found one also in your stream, Trey, from Matthew Wilkinson. He put 3 questions there, but I'm going to ask one of the second ones in the middle. How can photography be used to highlight complex social issues? How many photographers grant royalty-free copyrights to grassroots NGOs in order so that they can sell the images or use on their websites, etc.? And do they do that?
Someone else answer that, please.
I could answer.
I don't do any of the. I don't do any anything like that. So in fact, one thing that's quite annoying to me. There's nothing wrong with NGO type stuff. It's very noble and this and that. I think there's room for that. But when we do a lot of licensing. In fact, we have a full-time licensing guy that does nothing but license photos, and so we get many requests coming in all the time. And we get a lot of these nonprofits that contact us, and their base assumption is that we'll give it to them for free because they're a nonprofit. Well, we charge nonprofits just as much as anybody else. Nonprofits often make a very good deal of money. It doesn't necessarily mean they're a charity, by the way. They just be a nonprofit. They make a lot of money, and they pay all their employees. They like, let's say they're licensed. They want an image to put on a brochure or something, right? Well, they might be printing 100,000 of these brochures. Well, they're going to pay the printer, to print. They're going to pay the mail to mail them off, but they're not going to pay the photographer for the image. They expect that for free. And anyway, it's a little bit. We always get into a little bit with these guys because they feel like they should be given everything for free, and we always push back on them. And we don't do it. But that doesn't necessarily fall into the nature of this question. So maybe someone else here has done some of this type of work, and they can speak to that.
Is the question about whether or not you want to give away some of your stuff for free? Is that kind of where it was coming from? And I know we lost her for a minute, but do you remember, is that what she was asking, Trey? Like, how do you decide if you want to give up images or let someone use your images for free for a commercial purpose?
I guess it probably is just a personal decision. If you like what the NGO does and you want to give them full rights to your image, then that's fine.
Yeah, I think it just depends on where you are as far as your career in photography. If you're just starting out and it's more important for you to get a following or get some exposure, then maybe you'd be willing to do some of these things. Whereas once you've built up a reputation, you can kind of say, you know what, I don't need to do that anymore. There's a lot of photography contests that I've been looking at, and when you read their terms, you'll see that you're pretty much giving up all your rights to that image. All they're going to do is give you credit, like, hey, so-and-so won it, and then they can use your image whenever they want to, wherever they want to. And for me, based on just my own personal feelings of where I am right now, I wasn't willing to give up something like that. Maybe someone is, and that's fine, as long as you just kind of weigh your options.
I have a question here in my stream. Actually, I can circle these up into a little cluster. Michael Hemawan asks, how long is it take for you for scouting a new place to find your spot in your first visit? And that's, a lot of people are also asking about Stuck on Earth and this sort of thing. When is it coming out? The answer to the question is I now use this new app we made called Stuck on Earth to scout locations. It's great. I'm happy to talk about it because it's a free app. So I think it's fine to promote a free app. And it's really great. We are final bug testing now. We'll probably submit to the Apple Store any day now. We're just crushing some final bugs and adding a few final features. I think there's a few people here in this chat that are some of the lucky 100 insider testers. Yes.
Yeah, but I don't have an iPad.
Not you, Dave. I'm not looking for endorsement from an Android guy. Even though, yes, this is a common question we get. We will build an Android version.
Yes.
Someday. Oh, look, RC just pulled it up.
Nice.
Hey, RC.
Hey,
you have to talk so the screen goes to you.
I do. One of the things that I think that's really was really wild. I opened it up and I was welcomed back, and my wife quickly did a quick look, and she was just like, and I'm like, no, look, it's Trey's thing. Look, it's Trey. So, but dude, it's, you know what? Dare I say, sexy. It's just a sexy app. It's one of those things where it's like, I'm playing around with it, and I just started kind of like digging under it, and every now and again I'll pick it up, and it looks really good. It just looks cool. So I'm excited, man. I mean, I'm excited to see it go like just all the way out there, and all of a sudden everybody start using it and start playing with it and start putting trips and planning and things like that. But you guys did a really good job at this.
Oh, thanks. Gordon, I see you're holding it up there too.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying it, and I'm compiling a list for you at the moment, Trey, that I hope you'll find most satisfactory.
You're putting a top 50 list for New Zealand, right?
I am, yeah.
Good.
So if anyone's listening here who thinks that their photo should be in the top 50 list of New Zealand, then get it to me. Post your link to Flickr on my Google Plus stream, but make sure it's geotagged first. I already have some fantastic pictures, so it's going to have to be pretty good to get in there. It's really exciting. It's nice. I think the curated stuff is really fun because you can see what other people think, and there's lots of different ways that they've gone about doing it. So just when you think, oh, I wonder if they do it like that, then you see another way and you think, oh yeah, someone did it that way or this way. I'm really enjoying it.
Oh,
Cool.
Trey, thank you for adding Scott to the database of names.
Yeah, she says your name.
Yes, it finally says my name.
Yeah, that's
That was a
good.
nice
Yeah, she
surprise.
says a lot of names now. RC, is your name in there? I don't think so. You don't have a common name, RC. But if you have one of the common names, she'll actually say your name. Oh, we lost Julie. I was just about to ask her if she had another.
I can.
question
You want me
for us.
to ask you a question that's from your stream earlier today when you asked or told people
Sure.
about the.
You bet.
Okay, so it's from Nita Talani, and the question is, how do us poor souls with point-and-shoot cameras do better at clicking night shots? The night settings normally take a very steady hand or a tripod at the least to click clear pics. What's your secret? And it says, hint, you cannot say use a tripod. And let me attempt to answer his question. You tell me how close I got.
Okay. I think that's
Okay.
a girl. I think Nita is a girl, by the way.
Okay. So if it's just a point-and-shoot digital camera, you can adjust the ISO settings on it so they're much higher. Of course, when you do that, you're going to introduce some noise into your picture. But something else that you can do is if somebody has some type of a sweater, scarf, or jacket, and you're able to get your balance, kind of balance your camera on a railing that's near at the vantage point that you want, you can actually kind of curl that jacket up around your camera just to stop it from shifting left to right. Now, I know, Trey, you've got a little tiny beanbag thing that you can set your camera on, which you used at the History Museum that we attended. But, if you don't carry a little tiny beanbag thing, just use a garment of clothing to kind of bunch up around your camera and just to stop it from shifting left and right as you're balancing it on some type of a ledge. So the
Here's
higher
another thing
ISO,
you can use. I got this from Photo Jojo. I think that's what it's called. It's a tripod head that will screw into the bottom of your little point and shoot, and the bottom side is a bottle cap, so it'll fit on any water bottle.
Cool.
So there's water bottles everywhere now, and you'll be good to go. So that's great. The steady, you have to have a steady camera for night photography. There's just no way around it, I'm afraid. Go ahead, Gordon.
I would say I absolutely agree with Scott there. I'm a great believer of. I do a lot of night photography when I'm away traveling, and I never ever take a tripod. I always use a hat, a beanie hat, or as Scott was saying, a bunched up item of clothing. The only thing you have to watch out for is very easy for something to just protrude in front of the lens, and you get a kind of dark bit at the bottom of your picture. So always watch the bottom of your picture when you're balancing it on clothing. Equally good, fences, posts, almost anything. I do frequently travel with one of these. This is a Gorilla Pod. These are fun. This is the biggest one. For point and shoot, they're about half this size. Bendy legs, you can wrap it around anything, which is fantastic. But in terms of persuading an automatic point and shoot camera to do long exposures, what I would do, which is sometimes quite effective, choose the lowest ISO, because since you are going to be balancing it, it doesn't matter how long the exposure is. But it will almost always try and fire the flash. It will always go, I don't care that the building is 3 miles away or you're trying to take a picture of a mountain. I'm going to fire the flash. That'll solve everything, which of course it doesn't. And the worst thing about the flash going off is that the camera thinks it's done a great job. If you force the flash to switch off, and to do that, you go through the flash options, you look for the button with the lightning symbol on it, and you go through the options until you get the one with the circle and the line through it, like a no entry or a Ghostbusters sign. That turns the flash off, and the camera goes, oh no, what am I going to do? I'm going to have to select a long exposure now. And that's exactly what you want. And what you then do is you use the self-timer to set the picture, because otherwise you'll wobble the camera when you press the shutter release button. So use the self-timer, and then stand back. If it's on a ledge, hold the strap loosely so you're not wobbling the camera, but hold it in case it falls off the ledge. I've had that happen many times, but I've caught it, fortunately. And you're good to go. And I've taken some nice nighttime photos using that technique with fully auto point and shoot cameras.
I carry.
Sorry, go ahead, Marcy.
I was going to say I carry. Manfrotto makes. I think it's like an MTT02. MTT02 P02, I think it is. It's the only reason I know is because it's Manfrotto tabletop tripod 02, and it's probably about a tripod about yay big around. So it's really skinny with a really small head, and I can literally carry that in my pocket. So if I'm doing any kind of scouting or playing around, I usually just kind of throw that in my pocket, and that's gotten me out of a lot of scenarios where I've needed to be able to do stuff at night. And basically, I'll just throw it on a roof of a car or on a ledge or on something like that. And it holds surprisingly. Like I can hold my D3S with a 24-70. I've even had it on crunch time with 70-200, and it's done okay. It's definitely better than nothing. So that's the kind of thing that I would use. I can put that link somewhere if you guys want it. Let's see.
I bet with that 70-200, you were pretty close by to catch it.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not going very far.
Hey, Julie, did we lose Julie again?
She's coming right back.
Oh.
She is in
I
the
have a
chat
question here from on my thread from the very nice Philip Farag with 2 Fs, some alliteration. He says, do you have any plans for 2012? What countries or places are on your need to visit list? Love the shot. He's talking about the shot. Okay. So 2012, I don't have much planned because that's a moving year for me. I'm moving my family internationally to New Zealand, and that's sort of a big effort. It's not easy, so that'll take up a big chunk of my year. But I will still be traveling quite a bit. The only things I know for sure are Burning Man. I'm going to do that again. I've gone to Iceland for the past 4 or 5 solstices. This time I'm not going to do Iceland, even though I still love it. But I'm going to try Norway this time. I've heard that's lovely at the solstice. And then my only other trip is I usually go to this ranch in Yellowstone every year. It's sort of this weird thing I do. It's this. This is going to sound really strange when I say it, but there's this. Somehow, I got roped into this group of these libertarians, right? These laissez-faire economist guys that are all scientists, and it's actually one of the TED guys. There's sort of this satellite TED event in this remote area of Yellowstone, this private ranch. You have to like ride a horse for 3 hours to get into this place. It's so remote. But once you get in there, there's internet and they're like ranch hands, and it's great. But anyway, so I do that every summer, and I take photos and hike and relax and this sort of thing. Those are the only for sure trips I have planned. But I've got a huge list. I have about 70 places on this board of places I want to hit in the next several years. But I think mostly because of my family move and everything, it'll be a little bit light. And plus, I'll be in New Zealand with you, Gordon, and we go hang out and do whatever people do in Queenstown.
Many nice things to take pictures of.
Yeah. Has Julie returned to us now?
I am back.
Okay, Julie. Every time I go to you to get more questions, you disappear.
I'm sorry. Let me just open up. I just got to open up a couple more windows because I had to restart.
Hey Trey, there was a kind of related question. There was a related question to what you were just talking about, because you go back to Iceland quite a lot. And Tim Lutic on your stream said, how often do you come back to a place you've already shot and reshoot it? Say if you're in some exotic country and you shoot a 7 out of 10 sunset, will you return to the same spot the next night if it looks like it could be a 10 out of 10 sunset?
Yes, I will keep. Well, let me readjust my look here while I'm talking. So I will return to a spot many, many times. I think all photographers will, because you become very sensitive to light. And you know that there's many like big chunk light conditions, morning, middle of the day, sunset, dusk, and night. Those are the big chunks. But within each of those, there are shades of gray. And layered on top of each of those are different weather conditions. So, you never quite know what you'll get. And it's definitely worth returning to the same spot many times.
You just got hit with that in Seattle recently, right, Trey?
Yeah, I had good weather the first night and then bad the rest of the time. So I'm jealous of Lucas that he gets to live there. Okay, someone take the next question. I gotta go with the doctor.
I was going to say that the other thing about revisiting locations is that if you're a gearhead like me, there's the temptation to return and shoot it with better equipment. Maybe you've got a high-resolution camera, a better corrected lens or something. Or maybe you went to this fantastic location with so there's great long exposure needed to do, and the hat didn't quite work. So you think, you know what, I am gonna come back this time with a tripod and do it properly. So I frequently revisit locations, not to try and get better light, but to shoot it with better technique or better equipment.
Yeah, I'll tell you that what Trey is saying. He's also not. He hasn't told you that sometimes he just won't take the shot during that trip if it's not the ideal conditions. And earlier this year, he visited Savannah, and we went out around. I tried to show him all the highlights of Savannah, and there was this one spot, beautiful setting, but it was just a plain blue sky. And I remember just driving around, just kind of looking over at Trey's expression to see where he wanted me to stop. And he just said, we don't need to stop. He said, I'll just come back here next time. And it's just because the conditions weren't ideal for him. Now, granted, most people aren't going to be traveling as much as he does, but he just has that type of conditioning to be able to just give up a shot if he doesn't feel like it's going to be anything spectacular. Right, Trey?
I am back.
I've got a question in chat here from Christopher William. How do you avoid halos, especially between lighter and darker areas of a photo when processing HDRs?
Well, when he says especially between lighter and darker areas, that's about the only place it happens. But Jacob, you want to answer that? You process a ton of HDRs, I know.
Yeah, that's a good question, and it depends on, I guess, the software that you process with. I use Photomatix myself, like most people here, I think. I can't speak for a lot of other software, but I know that in Photomatix there's a smoothing slider, which controls the degree of smoothness of the light. And if you adjust it left and right, you'll see parts of the image get lighter and darker as you adjust the slider left and right. More towards the left of the scale is the ethereal flicker type HDRs, where there are halos over everything, and the far right hand side I find is where the halos tend to disappear. You just need to find, I guess, the sweet spot for your particular image. In that case, it may be that far right doesn't work at all for you, or makes other parts darker. But that is generally one of the more common places to fix it, is during tone mapping. I think Nick has an anti-halo setting that you can check. Does anyone out here use Nick for?
Yeah, it does. It does have one of its drop-down methods. Does have it.
But it's just one of those things that you need to watch out for, and it can be hard to sort of pick up on. I know when I was first learning how to tone map and process for HDR, it was one of those things that I sort of noticed right at the end, like, why is there this sudden change in light from dark blue gradient to bright white, or something like that, which is often the halo around a building and a sky or something like that. And it's just one of those things you sort of have to watch out for during the tone mapping process. More often than not, if you don't catch it until later, all the changes you've applied, like contrast and any filters or plugins that you've used, like anything from Nikon One that you apply to your image after tone mapping, will generally accentuate what's already there. So smoothing slider, Reader's Digest version.
All right, so we only have about 20 minutes left. Is that right, Keith, before you have to cut off the recording?
No, we have about 15, but then we can, if you want, we can just stop and start a brand new video with a new intro and keep going as long as you want. We can just do another one.
Well, we'll keep it going, but we'll probably stop the recording. I have a question here, which I can first answer, but I think it'll be healthy discussion material for everybody, because I think RC will have something to say for sure. I think Gordon and, well, everyone will have something to say about this. So this is in my stream. Let me see if I can find it right down here. This is from Jeff Jarrett's, 2 G's again, with the alliteration. He says that plus Catherine Hall states that she first got started, quote, getting noticed, quote, by entering contests. What is your advice for moving beyond my hometown clients and gaining residual income from shots that I do for myself, rather than for a paying customer? So I guess the nature of the question is around contests, whether these are a good mechanism for getting noticed. So I have a very different opinion on this. I'll explain why. So I don't like contests. I don't like any contest. I think contests are ridiculous. And I'll say a few things about this. Why I say this. I'll go a little bit meta and say that contests have been around for, thousands of years, right? It's sort of this meta ranking system we come up and we can apply to any discipline. And contests have been popular with photography for a long time, because for so long photography has been in the grips of this gatekeeper model, right? In that there are certain people and entities out there, and if they promote you, then you will somehow end up getting noticed, right? Like Getty was a typical gatekeeper, right? If you can just get yourself on Getty, then they are the gatekeeper to the clients. But this whole idea of having gatekeepers that expose you to the world, that whole idea is falling by the wayside. That's sort of an old way of thinking. Now the gates are blown wide open, and the new gatekeeper is Google, and it is your network of people. And as you start sharing your work online, more and more people will start to comment on it and reshare it, so on and so forth. So, like, for example, it's much more interesting for me to Like there was this guy that was on a hangout a few weeks ago named Jaime Ibarra. I think he's a great local photographer here. I shared his work, and you can look at the ripple, and you can just see how it goes all over the place. And that's really more effective than winning a contest or anything like that. And so the point is just keep making fantastic content, and the internet will discover you. You don't have to go to these gatekeepers and just beg and plead for them to expose you to the world. The other bad thing about contests, and this is something that's really quite nasty about them, is that it indicates that there is a winner of a contest. And art is such a subjective thing. And whenever you have a committee of people deciding on the value of one piece of art over another piece of art, it's really a completely ridiculous comparison. Because someone may like something and someone may not like something else, and who's to say that one piece of art is better than another piece of art? I put up a piece of art, for example, in my stream. Some people love it; they go crazy over it. Some people hate it; they think I have done a deal with the devil. How can both things be true among rational people who walk through life and pay their taxes and buy stamps and love their children and feed their dogs? How can both normal people, normal citizens of the earth, have such drastic opinions on something? Well, I mean, that's the same thing that happens with contests. So, how can you judge what anybody says? There can only be one winner. There's all these people that don't feel like they're good enough. And now I say all this having won a very big popular contest, but I still think that contest was ridiculous. I don't know why I won. Anyone could have won, frankly. And I should point you to a really good discussion by Richard Feynman. He won the Nobel Prize. He thinks the Nobel Prize is ridiculous. He says there should be no such thing. It's a completely ridiculous, fictional committee that makes these ridiculous pronouncements for the benefit of people in the committee and the foundation and this and that. And so there's all kinds of reasons that I'm anti-contest. Anyway, that's a little bit of my spiel. I could go on, but RC, what do you think?
I keep going back and forth on what I think on the entire topic of contests, because the first opinion that I have is that contests do show a lot of bias. Usually like the judging of the contest is usually largely based on, the whims of the person who's making the judging. So whatever you think is the best image based on this one thing is, you could be right or you could be wrong. It's wild because it's like my wife does ballet, right? So she spends a lot of time doing ballet, and she takes all these kids to these competitions to be able to do stuff. And what happens is that they go out and they go and do these dances, and then these judges give them these scores, and then they come back and they take a look at these scores, and in itself it's almost kind of a contest. But the problem that I take a look at that and I'm like, well, a judge sucks one night and then he doesn't suck the next night. So the contest has a little bit of a bias. But initially I would want to throw away the contest because of that. But what happens is sometimes people are looking, it's easy for me to want to throw that away sitting in the position that I'm sitting in, right? It's easy for me to turn around and go, well, you don't need contests because your work will just, your work will rise, above the crowd. It's easy for me to say that given the position that I'm sitting in my job. However, if I'm, Joe and Mary Lunch Bucket, who's sitting there and starting to get, just getting on this and just working with this, if they're trying to be able to kind of bring themselves up, how do they know which way to be able to point the ship? Where do they, what does their compass look like? So to some degree, I feel like they can serve a purpose because it kind of lets somebody put their stuff to somebody and then turn around and say, all right, well, what do you guys as a collective group think? Am I hitting this mark? Am I not hitting this mark? Those things could also turn and they can give validity to somebody from a marketing standpoint. Not that people need that kind of validity, but if you're the best if you're one of the top 10 wedding photographers in Tampa that works on a Tuesday, that at least is some sort of marketing copy that you can use to be able to promote your business. And at the end of the day, who could you, can you fault a person for wanting to be able to do that? It's sometimes I think people want to join contests to be able to say that they're the winner of something. And I feel like for me, I would have a hard time turning around and going, contests suck. Knowing that I've A, won contests, B, sit in the position that I'm in, C, have the following that I do. It's kind of like I can go, contest sucks, but at the same time I'm going, your results may vary. And I just saw this. I just saw something come up here in the chat stream over where Keith's monitoring stuff, where somebody turned around and said, here, Graffiti Visuals had said, is that these days, great photographers like Trey, Tom Hawk, RC, these guys are in some way becoming the gatekeepers to the contest. And that's a little jarring. It's like when we become we hate the gatekeepers, but when people start seeing us as the gatekeepers, that's kind of suck too. What are we doing?
I don't think we're...
I was just about to say that. I mean, I would say that people like Trey and Thomas Hawk and Robert Scoble, these guys are the new gatekeepers, and Google Plus is the new contest. Because, whatever you guys think, when you share somebody's post, when you share someone's content, or even just mention them in a comment, you are endorsing them, and they are effectively winning the prize, because they will then acquire a ton of new subscribers or followers. And when the circle sharing happened, my Google Plus circles went from 2,000 to 15,000, and I didn't do anything other than be lucky enough to be on Thomas Hawk's and Robert Scoble's circles that they shared, and in that effect, I won the Google competition that day, because I went up by so much, and so did all the other people who were lucky enough to be in a similar position. So yeah, it's interesting that you say. I mean, Trey, you're going to have to do some soul searching, because you're the new Getty in that respect. You are the
ouch.
Here's my take on this stuff, right? This whole thing about focusing time and time of your mind, worrying about who's going to circle you when, is only taking away from effort you could be putting into making your art better. And I think that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I don't have the kind of following that Trey and RC and et al. Have, but when they share an image, I'm guessing it's because that particular image moved them in some particular way that said, this is awesome. I really want to share this with people. People need to see this artist because of the work that they're doing. And it's my bet because of that particular person isn't focusing on who's going to reshare my next post or which Google Plus contest, quote unquote, am I going to win next. It's because they're focusing on getting out there and shooting some more, or figuring out how best to tell their story with their camera, something like that.
And one of the things that I will say about that is the comment that Graffiti made in the post was a very, very jarring comment, but it's one of the things that I find to be very, very easily, and I'm jumping in front of Trey here to talk, but it's one of the things that I find very easily defensible from a Trey standpoint, because if there's one guy who I think has made it a point to be able to kind of blow down the doors of that kind of stuff, it is somebody like Trey. And that, I think, separates you from, becoming the man, if you will. Like, you're very, very keen on having your website, and you turn around and go, oh, you take a look at this. Oh, you want to see how to do this? Look, take a look. Here it is, right here. You can see all of it. You can be me if you want. Just follow this step. You can have it. So I give you a lot of credit to that respect, but it's very jarring when you turn around and you see that somebody sends this comment and they turn around and they go, these people can be gatekeepers. And I've seen that in Google, I've seen that a little bit on Google Plus, where it's like, I'm sorry, I think it was Gordon, you had mentioned the entire thing with the circles. I saw that when circle sharing started happening, there was a lot of this going around. I sure hope I get mentioned in one of these circles. This is my way to the top. And it's like, whoa, it got a little weird. It got a little weird. And it's one of those things that kind of freaked me out. So I don't know, I feel weird about it. I feel weird about saying, don't go win a contest. What do you like? They suck. They suck. Contests suck. And any contest that takes your stuff, sucks even more. That's stuff that you shouldn't be doing at all. But what about what do you say to the masses? What do you say to that guy who's just trying to come up, and he's try to be able to, make his next status? How do they do it?
Yeah, it's another meta point to remember here is that this is just the beginning of the internet. I think we all feel like, oh, it's so mature, it's too late. It's too late for me. Look how much everyone else has. But really, if you're even following this conversation that we're having right now, you're in the top 1%. And there's billions of people about to get on the internet. There's 7 billion people on Earth. Only about 1 billion of them are on right now, and only about half of them have decent bandwidth to consume media. Well, in the next 10 years, there's going to be so many more people on, so many more people, a lot of bandwidth, and they're all going to want great content. There's plenty of time for everybody. And just keep making great stuff. And, that's why I'm trying to use my position of power or whatever here with all these followers or whatever to have these hangouts and mention people like you, and they can watch you and listen to you, and they can say, hey, I kind of like, the way Gordon says stuff. I think he might be my kind of guy. I think I'm going to follow him, because it's, then people kind of make up their own mind, and they can, because building this personal network of people that you trust, people that you think say interesting things, or people that say things you might not agree with, but that make you think, you can kind of change the way that you build your filter on the world. And rather than going to the gatekeeper filters, now you can go to these individual people filters. I don't select you guys randomly to be in the hangout. I select you guys because, I like you, and I think you're interesting, and you're upstanding people, and I don't always agree with everything you say, but, I think you're clever and interesting, and you're in my network, and I think it'd be neat if you're in other people's network too. And so I think that's sort of the path of responsibility for all of us going forward. And there's plenty of time. There's no rush, and it's all just a fun thing. And I'm glad to be going through it with all you guys.
And the wild part about it all is that content will always rise. It's you might not believe it, you might not want to look at it, and it's one of those things that I think that you provide a good platform, because content will always kind of blip on a radar. Like this, as big as this industry can be, it's a really small spot. And when you start seeing content, you'll see content just kind of blip up, and you can kind of pick it out, and you can see stuff. Like here, perfect example. There's a guy named Tim Wallace. Tim Wallace is a UK-based automotive photographer. He does phenomenal automotive stuff. And we had him on this show that we do called The Grid, and he's talking, and I'm kind of working at my computer, and he turned around, and I'm listening to it, and I'm kind of not paying attention. And they're like, oh, when'd you get your start? And he's like, oh, yeah, you know what? I started about 4 years ago. And I did a triple take, and I looked at my screen, and he's like, yeah, I picked up an old D70. And I was like, what? Are you kidding me? You just started and he's like, yeah, I'm shooting Aston Martin, I'm shooting Maserati. And, the digital age has changed a lot of stuff. You can come up fast. If you have good content, you can get up there very, very quickly. So it's just kind of one foot in front of the other. You post good stuff, do work from your heart, and you'd be surprised as to how quickly you get noticed.
Just to interject a little bit here, this was a conversation I was having with somebody not too long ago for new photographers as well that are just getting into the digital age and posting their new stuff. What kind of advice would you guys offer for protecting your work? Because it's so easy to share and copy, and I know they're not going to be getting like the full image, that kind of thing, but I read a case, and I didn't look into it in full detail the other day on Google Plus, where apparently or allegedly somebody had been copying images from other photographers and then posting them on their own site claiming that they're theirs. So how do you protect your own work in this digital age as well? And that's for anybody. If it doesn't have to be Trey.
No,
or do you consider it?
I'll
Do you
answer
worry about
quickly.
it? Does it bother you? Does it concern you?
No, I don't know. Maybe he should listen to me. I don't know. My opinion is, don't worry about all that nonsense. Just put your stuff out there. Do what I do. Okay, I put out every day a huge image, 6,000 pixels across, all high res. I don't watermark it. But you know what? The internet knows the truth. Okay, it first goes up on my blog. It has my metadata in it. I have circled this up and said this is my image because it first makes its grand appearance on the internet with all my metadata and on my blog, and I announce it to the world. Now, people will copy it. That's fine. It's usually just the bottom feeders that copy it, by the way. Big, legitimate people and big, legitimate companies do not steal anything. American Airlines is going to come steal an image of Indonesia to put on their Indonesian travel special billboard or whatever. So you don't have to worry about legitimate companies stealing your stuff. It happens so rarely. I mean, you can get a lawsuit and whatever. That's another topic. But bottom feeders will steal your stuff. Let them. I say it's the cost of doing internet business. Those are the stolen Tic Tacs at the 7-Eleven. Just let them go. It's like Jack Handy said, you drop your keys into a river of molten lava, let them go, because, man, they're gone. Don't worry about all these little bottom feeders out there. If you spend all your time being motivated by fear rather than being motivated by the opportunity of what could be, then that puts you in a very different mental state. I'm not even asked RC because I know RC is going to say the same thing as me. Anybody have any differing opinions on that sort of thing? We only have about 3 minutes left, by the way.
I don't have a different opinion, but I want to reiterate that register your stuff with the Copyright Office. Do that. It takes 15 minutes online. But worrying about it beyond that is, again, like with the contest thing, coming back to that, it's just wasted effort that you could have been spending on creating more content or perfecting or improving your content instead of, like you said, chasing those Tic Tacs or the keys in the river.
Yeah, I do agree. We do license. I mean, we copyright all of our stuff with the Copyright Office. That's a very easy thing to do. I agree with that because that protects us when someone legitimate does steal the stuff, and we can get into a lawsuit. Yeah. Of course. All right. Well, let's go ahead and tie it up so we don't get halfway through a stream before having to cut off our hard 2-hour recording. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. I appreciate your time. Thank you, Keith, for broadcasting this live and for recording and uploading to my YouTube channel and all that. I appreciate it. And thanks again, everybody. We'll keep the conversation going, by the way, but let's go ahead and wave goodbye in a queen-like manner.
Yay!
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you. And scene.